Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Happy early Christmas for the Christmas celebrators. We are here for week 16 of the Slate breakdown. 11 gamer on DK, 12 on FanDuel. We've got a little special Saturday treat before then. So we're going to touch on that first. So perhaps I should probably load that slate here. Blaine, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I got absolutely wrecked last week, so I'm excited to get back on the proverbial horse.
Yeah, I remember when I showed my Sims that I ran earlier before the show. They're I think Rodgers was the highest owned quarterback, like Rodgers doubles at like 26%. I'm like, wow, that's terrible. I'm not playing that this week. And then obviously it turned out to where you kind of wanted
it. Yeah,
you might have wanted Rodgers double stacks that week.
Yeah.
All right, let me load in.
I did not have any. I ran 5 in that in the big FanDuel Million Maker one, and I didn't catch a single lineup.
Damn. I think I ran 3, cashed 1, and then my other 2 were they just got hammered by, Devontae Adams and Rodgers stacks. I mean, the trio of Rodgers, Adams, and Wilson was relatively cheap, was it not?
Yes, it was.
I mean, given the target share and the touchdown equity of basically the outside of Breece Hall, who isn't really functioning in that role in the offense as much anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're just getting all the targets and all the equity. So I mean, in hindsight, obviously a great play, and the Sims told me to play it, so of course I ignored it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The tools that we built too.
Yeah, I know. It's so hard to trust.
Yep.
So Saturday starts us off with the Texans at Arrowhead. Chiefs obviously ranking really highly in run defense, and Bobby Slowick's plan on the Texans to run the ball with Joe Mixon over and over and over may not be as successful tomorrow. What sort of leans do you have on this Texans-Chiefs game?
Yeah, and the Sims I was running before the slate. I haven't put up our projections yet, by the way. I'm going to do that later tonight, and then I'll post an update if there's some Mahomes isn't getting rolled out or something. I'll put that up in the morning. But pretty much everything I was getting in the top 150 of the main slate on DraftKings was all Stroud and Mahomes stacks. And I think Stroud stacks especially make a lot of sense, even though, the Bobby Slowick loves to run the ball. I think it makes a lot of sense to go with Stroud here and just hope that they fall behind. The Chiefs defense is, I think, number 1 in EPA against the run right now. So maybe they'll just have no success at all and they'll just be forced to throw. That'd be the hope. But yeah, I'm definitely going to have a lot more of the first game than the second one.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it too. Obviously, the total is a bit better in the second game, but again, the offenses are very run heavy. There's injuries to concern in that game. Obviously, Lamar has been MVP caliber up until now, but on this Chiefs game, like you said, the Chiefs' run D has been really good this season. 7th fewest yards before contact, just under 4 yards per carry allowed. And Joe Mixon does have great touchdown equity, and he's getting tons of opportunity share, 85-90% opportunity share, especially in the red zone. But it's going to be hard for them to do that against this Chiefs team. And the script is going to, at least to me, plays out to where Chiefs are able to control the pace of play and extend their drives and really win on defense and play field position. The Chiefs are going to have Marquise Brown back, or Hollywood Brown. He legally changed it, right?
I don't know if he legally changed it, but yeah, Hollywood.
Hollywood. Stone Min on DraftKings, so obviously a really good value play there. I'm guessing you're getting a lot of him in the Sims.
Let me see. Not a lot.
I wonder if there's just enough value. There are cheapies on Pittsburgh too that we'll talk about that kind of fill in that value gap. But if you do need somebody cheap and you're kind of wanting to stack this Chiefs offense, I think Hollywood Brown's probably a fine spot. It impacts more of the perimeter receivers like the Worthies and the Justin Watsons. Not a huge effect really to Juju or DeAndre Hopkins a ton, but in general, Chiefs are spreading the ball around. Even Travis Kelce is ceding targets to Noah Gray, who's averaging a couple a game now, including end zone targets. So do you have preferred stacking options for the Chiefs, or is there anyone that stands out to you?
Well, I think there was a import issue on the Hollywood Brown. I think whatever data set I was using still had him as Marquise, and that's why he didn't show up in my Sims. So that said, I still like Worthy. I mean, every week it seems like Worthy's going to have a big game, and then he doesn't. But he's clearly a focal point right now in the way the Chiefs are playing. So I still like getting to him. I don't really have any specific preferences. whoever kind of our tools say to get to is who I'll be end up playing. Like I'm not. The Chiefs are just both of these teams. Well, the Texans at least focus more on Nico Collins, but the Chiefs especially, it's so hard to figure out what they're going to do week to week that I'd rather just kind of roll the dice with whatever the projections and tools say, and then also all that relative to ownership.
Right. And then as far as the Chiefs backfield goes, obviously they've got the three-headed committee, Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, and a little bit of Samaje Perine. We talked about this, and this is like one of my strategies I like to employ on shorter slates like this, is pairing quarterbacks with their running back for game environment bets where you're betting that game just scores more than the other game, and you're going to want, touchdown and points no matter where they come from. And I think it's something that the field is still not doing a ton. Like obviously on a main slate, you're not stacking Mahomes with Pacheco, or you're not stacking Joe Mixon with CJ Stroud. But that is something that I think is more viable on these shorter slates, and it's something that the field's not going to do. So it's a way that you can play into ownership while remaining a bit unique just because of the way your lineup is constructed.
Yeah, even in the semi ran, I got about 80% Mixon and 82 or 87% Nico Collins. Now quarterback ownership was a little more spread out. But yeah, I Mixon, I mean, he's a 3-down back right now. They do sometimes bring in Ogunbowale, but it's not that often. So I don't think Ogunbowale has a reception in the last few games anyway. So yeah, I don't mind playing Stroud and Mixon together at all. Now Mahomes and Pacheco, on the other hand, yeah, you can play them together as a kind of like loading up on the Chiefs and hoping they score 30 points. But I kind of would rather play Hunt or Samaje Perine with Mahomes than Pacheco. But I mean, I wonder how popular the Pacheco Mahomes combination is going to be because of that.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a slate where raw points matter. We've got 4 teams, 3 of them who have really good defenses and tend to run the ball more than they need to. So I mean, in general, raw points are going to matter on Saturday. So getting like a 1 touchdown, 60-yard performance out of Joe Mixon on your CJ Stroud lineup could be the difference between you winning or not. So just want to point that out, that there's no issues playing, even a workhorse non-passing back with their own quarterback on this slate.
Yep. And yeah, that's pretty. Yeah. I was going to say something about the next game, but let's go ahead and finish this one first.
Yeah. I mean, that's really it for me. As far as stacking goes, I think I would prefer stacking the Stroud side of this and coming back with the Chiefs. I just think that if this game is providing environment for high scoring, it's likely coming through the Texans being able to move the ball down the field efficiently, and it's probably coming through the pass game.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. I'm probably gonna throw. I'm in MME. I'm not rolling with 150, but I'll have a decent set of lineups in the main on DraftKings. I'm expecting to get quite a bit of Stroud. I think I got 40% of Stroud in my first run, and I'm expecting to get about that in my final set. So yeah, and I'm expecting to get a lot of Nico Collins. Obviously, he's kind of matchup proof at this point. Tank Dell is probably going to be pretty interesting. I don't know what his ownership is expected to come in at, but that is one that if he's going to be super low owned, his upside is so high. I mean, he's tanked a lot of games this year, no pun intended. But he does get all the deep routes, so he just needs to catch 1 or 2 of those, and then he's in the optimal lineup on this slate.
Yeah, I do think Dalton Schultz probably steps into a bit of a bigger role. Cade Stover was injured. Not that he didn't have a big role already. Dalton Schultz is a huge target for the Texans. Yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
Did Schultz get hurt last week during the game? I don't remember. Yeah, he left the game last week. He's fine?
I believe so. He's projected as in for now. Yeah, I don't even know who would be behind him if he didn't go. Cade Stover.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, I mean, Tank Dell.
Is that Brevin Jordan?
I don't know. Yeah, that tough situation. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tank Dell's fine too. Obviously on a short slate, ownership should be probably a little bit reduced. His game scores haven't been great the last 2 weeks, just because of the way the Texans are running out a lot of 12 personnel against Miami, and that just leads to fewer snaps for Tank to run. So yep. I'm not sure if that's sticky. I don't think it will be. I think it really depends on defensive scheme and injuries that they were facing at the time. So
yeah, I think a lot of it is just game state too. They were ahead of that Miami game for most of it.
Right, just more run blocking, less needs to take shots downfield. Makes sense. Let's hit on the Steelers and Ravens second game of this slate. Both teams generally run heavy teams if they can. And now Steelers are still without George Pickens. Makes Russ not as effective with his deep ball. I mean, he's still got downfield targets like Calvin Austin and Mike Williams, even Van Jefferson to an extent, who can make plays or do stuff after he catches. But it's not an environment like if George Pickens was in and playing, I'd probably have a lot more love for Russ stacks on this slate specifically. But without him, the Steelers offense tends to be pretty sluggish, and even the remaining receivers aren't soaking up all of that target share, like Freiermuth and I think Calvin Austin's maybe operating as a wide receiver primary, but they're only seeing like 7 to 8 targets a game. It's not like they're garnering these massive double-digit target shares that that George Pickens has left a void for.
Yeah, and they spread the ball around, and they also have the 2 running backs that, especially Jaylen Warren, gets a lot of targets. So yeah, tough to really go for any of these pass catchers. I got hardly any of both Freiermuth and Austin in the top 150 of the sim that I ran, and hardly any Russ too. I think I got 2% Russ. So yeah, he just doesn't sim well. I don't mind getting to. I think you can do a lot of stuff with Najee and Jaylen Warren with some negative correlations there. Try to force a little more of those 2 in if you want to. But yeah, it's just a tough game for the Steelers offense. They just don't look the same without being able to throw up the 60-yard pass interferences for George Pickens.
Yeah, Harris and Warren are still splitting, with Harris being sort of the lead back, positive game script back, and Warren coming in for passing work. And I think that sets up well for the script here, doing a Jaylen Warren run back if you're playing a Lamar stack or if you're playing the Derrick Henry rushing game. I think Warren's probably my favorite out of the Pittsburgh Steelers backfield.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the Ravens defense has improved from what we saw earlier in the year when everybody was scoring on them. I think they're top 5 right now in EPA against the run, but they're bottom 5 against the pass. So if the Steelers move the ball, you would think it's through the air. It's just tough to decide who on this team is actually going to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw like Darnell Washington getting snaps and targets last game. They're really just throwing everybody in there. And I agree with you. Like the Ravens have been so far this season just a team that you want to pass on. One, because the game script usually sets up that way with Lamar scoring like 30 a game and running for 100 yards, but they're also just weaker in that middle of the field secondary area than they are up front. So definitely easier to target them through there, whether that's Warren out of the backfield or like Van Jefferson on a slant route or something. It's hard to say. I would probably just take a shot at 1 or 2, just whatever fits in price wise and whatever makes sense ownership wise. I'm not allocating a ton of my roster to like, oh, I want Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, or I want Austin and Freiermuth. It's really just a one-off spot for me to save salary.
Mm-hmm. With you there.
Derrick Henry obviously in a pretty good spot here. Lamar's kind of been bipolar this season. Like some games Derrick Henry's able to control and they'll just run the game and he'll have like 18 pass attempts for 180 yards, like a really middling game. And then another game, obviously he goes for 4 passing touchdowns, 100 rushing yards and nukes. So it's kind of hard to tell what you're going to get here. I tend to lean that this is going to be a bit of a slower game and probably more of a Derrick Henry game than it is Lamar. But then again, you have Lamar Jackson, who has one of the highest ceilings in all of the quarterbacks in the NFL. And now you put him on a slate where he's one of 2 games and it's, I'm still going to have exposure there. I think it'd be silly not to, but for me, it sets up more as a Derrick Henry game than a Lamar plus pass catchers.
Yeah, I do. I also think that's just going to be the general consensus. Zay Flowers is probably going to be very popular because of his salary. He's only $5,900. I'll probably end up being under that, I think. I mean, he's really good and he's unquestioned number 1 receiver, but at that ownership, I'd rather just get more pieces from the early game.
Yeah. Any other love for the Ravens running backs like Justice Hill or Patrick Ricard is like, 2-game slate. Maybe this guy falls in the end zone. Maybe this guy gets a bit more, passing game work, maybe like a 2-minute drill for Justice Hill or something.
Yeah. I mean, you can always play Justice Hill as the pass catching back. You can even play him with Derrick Henry because they alternate so much. And you really are just looking for 2 touchdowns from Derrick Henry and a receiving touchdown from Justice Hill. I don't mind that. This is just a tough game for me to get to. I think Lamar Jackson I think every game Lamar Jackson's played against Mike Tomlin has been finished within 1 score, and they've all been low scoring. And I don't really expect that to change.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's a wizard. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to chat about here? I mean, obviously, like you said, the price on Zay Flowers is really good, and the field's probably going to be there. We did see a lot of Bateman deep targets last week, and I played some Bateman, and it turned out pretty well. But they're really cheap, and I guess we have a lot of value options here. Like how much do you think you're really going to get to like a Rashad Bateman or like an Isaiah Likely, maybe Mark Andrews here?
Just in probably Lamar onslaughts would be the only type of lineup I'd expect to. I think I have 5% Rashad Bateman and 3% Tylan Wallace. So just not very much. I mean, I'm definitely going to be focused on that first game. And then I'll probably end up being all mad that I faded the second game because it's going to go off. But in my opinion, I just think that first game is the one I'm going to want to target. It just sets up very well for Houston having to throw the ball a lot. And
yeah, Max like that.
Yeah. He likes the Stroud stacks, everybody.
Yeah, I'm with you on the same page. I'm focusing more on the early game and trying to get different unique combinations of that. I probably will. I like the idea of just locking Derrick Henry, not because I think he's going to do well, but I think it gives you a lot of flexibility for late swap. At 8,000, you can pivot him down to anybody else if you're either ahead or behind. I think he's a great play if you're ahead and you want the safe floor with potential upside. And then if you're coming and trailing to that second game, you always have room to pivot him down to somebody less owned.
Yeah. What settings will you use for the Sims when you're running 2-gamer like this?
Yeah, I like to drop a lot of the requirements. One, just to be able to generate more field lineups. So projection minimum, I'll drop down from 5 to probably around 3 or 2, depending on, what players are showing up there. Like we've got like Scotty Miller at 2.1, CPAT at 3.1. So like around there is probably where my cutoff's going to be for like these tertiary pieces where like, sure, I'll let them in lineups, but I'm probably not playing them. I like to shift a bit of my lineup scoring weights to ownership and win percentage. And then obviously I'll drop minimum lineup salary and max percent off optimal a lot lower as well.
Yeah, I also focus on ROI, I think, and I turn it on projection minimum all the way to 0.1, just to get in just every play with the projection, basically kind of like Showdown.
Yeah.
And then defense, I just don't really care about how many players against my quarterback or just against my like 4 players against my defense is fine to me. Then also the other thing I do is I turn down number of Sims per generation and turn up the number of generations, just to try to estimate, because really like a 2-game slate like this, we're trying top heavy contest. We're trying to figure out which lineups aren't going to be played and which ones they still have a chance to win. And I think like 10,000, like you're doing now, and more generations of the main contest on DraftKings is the way to go to get a good estimate for how often each lineup is expected to be played. And then what you could do after is once you figure out, okay, this is the pool of low dupe lineups that I want to try out, then you could put them back in the sim and turn up the number of Sims if you wanted to figure out which ones are best. But that's kind of my general strategy for these small slates like this.
Yeah, I think those are pretty good heuristics to follow. I like what you said about defenses too. Like totally fine. I don't mind playing CJ Stroud against the Chiefs D at all. I think it's actually one of my favorite combos so far from what I've built.
Yeah, and Steelers Voodoo against Lamar onslaughts probably works too.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, these are in general pretty good defensive units who can generate pressure and turnovers. And like the passing volume may not be up, but there's not really. It's a 2-game slate where passing volume is probably not going to be up in either of them. More so Chiefs game if anything, which is why I like the Chiefs defense. But yeah, it's going to fall where they fall. I'm just going to make sure I don't have like 90% of some defense and none of the others.
Yeah, and even Texans are pretty interesting with Mahomes having a bad ankle. You would assume his mobility won't be there, which makes him much more likely to take sacks. And the offensive line has been so bad for the Chiefs that I could definitely see lineups winning with Mahomes quarterback and Texans defense.
Yeah. Just get weird with it. Play whatever comes up, really.
Mm-hmm.
Probably covers it for the Saturday 2-gamer and move on to Sunday.
Yep.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's start it off with Pats at Bills for the largest spread on the slate, I believe. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. Josh Allen obviously coming off his monster performances over the past 2, maybe 3 weeks, making his MVP run. This game, however, to me, I do not see that being the case, or I don't foresee the Bills looking that way. The Patriots run DVOA is terrible. The Bills are happy to run the ball, and I think that they do want to win. I think they're fighting for number 1 seed, right? They're tied with the Lions up there, I believe, or the Eagles.
The Bills, the Chiefs. I think they're 1 game back of the Chiefs still, aren't they? Or maybe they're tied now.
Yeah, so I mean, they're definitely going to try to win, but I don't think it's a spot where they have to press the issue. They're going to be able to handle New England pretty handily.
Yeah, they are 2 games back of the Chiefs right now. So they're still live, but they'll also know, because the Chiefs play on Saturday, they'll know if they, like, what their odds are of winning. I mean, I don't think it really changes much for them. I think there's supposed to be snow too in this game. It didn't matter when the Bills played the Niners, but we did see them lean on the run a lot more in that game against San Francisco. So I think we could see a similar thing here. I don't really see the Bills stepping on the gas pedal unless they're really trying to get Josh Allen the MVP. But even then, he can have an average game and still be the favorite to win MVP.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills are typically pretty crazy with how their head coach likes to do things, but I don't think they're that crazy. They're probably just going to get out of here with a win and move on. Kind of leads me to the backfield here. There's a lot of good running back plays on this slate. And I think other slates would have a lot more interest in somebody like James Cook, but now he's splitting work with Ty Johnson on pass downs, and Ray Davis is stepping in occasionally. There's just not enough for me to want to get to the backfield on the Bills. And then Josh Allen's priced up. He's throwing to 7 or 8 different receiving options on the team. It's really hard to stack, and I don't think I want to run out the Josh Allen naked QB this week. There's a lot of good cheap options and QBs with ceilings below him that I think are more likely to hit in game environments than this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could talk me into getting a little over the field on James Cook, but you don't really need to do much to do that. Yeah, just in general, not really a game I'm going to be targeting much.
No, I'm with you. I barely had any notes for this game. I think like Curtis Samuel, check the injury report, he may be out, but even then, it's not like anybody's going to elevate into an elite role if Curtis Samuel's out. So it's just there's really not a ton on my radar from this game. Cheapies from New England, maybe if you want to get there, but I don't have a ton of faith in the Patriots on the other side of the ball either. Like maybe Demario Douglas has a short target when Bills get pressure. They don't blitz a lot, but I think they'll still be able to get a ton of pressure. And that might open up more stuff, shorter, intermediate for like Demario Douglas. But there's really not a lot for me from this game.
Yeah, Henry's getting ownership a little bit as a cheap tight end, but that's fine. Like I'm not going to be targeting him or anybody else, I think, on the Patriots offense. But if he ends up in some lineups, it's okay too.
I'm with you there. Pretty uninteresting spot for me. Browns at Bengals, an interesting spot here. Would have been 1,000 times more interesting if we had Jameis Winston under center.
Yeah.
But we don't. So, I mean, Jameis against the Bengals secondary, I mean, this game could have been absolute fireworks.
Yeah.
We would have had like Jamar Chase 30% own, the whole thing would have been amazing. But we get Dorian Thompson-Robinson instead, who has not looked good in any shape of the word while starting for the Browns. Yeah, it really gets me off of the Browns pieces almost entirely. There's still a bit of love for me for like if I get bringbacks in like my Bengals stacks, I might play them, I might consider them. But for me, like all my interest now is focused on the Bengals side of the ball. I love the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow stack this week.
Yeah, that one makes a lot of sense to me. I came in with Sims. I was running about twice the field own on Jamar Chase and actually a little bit under on Chase Brown. I think it's just Jamar Chase's upside is so ridiculous that he just sims really well no matter what the environment is. I am a little worried about the Browns' pace here with Dorian Thompson-Robinson in. With Jameis, they're just throwing the ball 40 times a game. With DTR, I think they're going to be a little more run focused, and that definitely potentially lowers the upside of the Bengals here, and it makes me less interested in the Burrow Chase stack depending on ownership. I think an 18% Chase is fine. Like, he's one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the league. He's got as much upside as anybody, so I'm just fine getting 30+% of him, like what I got in the Sims just a second ago.
Yeah, nothing wrong there at all. Browns like Njoku and Tillman, I think are questionable or on the doubtful side of questionable. So like more concentrated stuff for Jerry Jeudy, more target opportunities, but still not a ton of love there. Myles Garrett is still dealing with that eye poke. He may be out. Shelby Harris, another defensive tackle, likely out for the Browns. So more time for Burrow in the pocket. Not that he really needs a ton, but there's just yeah. And on the Brown side too, as far as them being able to move the ball, like DTR is not great. And now, Nick Chubb's out for the season as well with his foot injury. So that puts Jerome Ford as leader in the backfield, who honestly, I think they might be more reliant upon, giving more workload to. We saw when Nick Chubb came back, he was getting like 33, 44, like low 30s, low 40s snap rates. And they were never really elevating him to like that lead back role. But now without him, they basically got Jerome Ford and a cast of nobody's behind him. So I think there's going to be a lot more reliance on him out of the backfield, even through passing work stuff. Maybe they throw Deonta Foreman into passing down work, but he was never a great pass catcher with Chicago. So yeah. Do you have a read on the backfield for Cleveland?
No, I'm just assuming that Jerome Ford will be the number one and get most of the touches. Last year, they weren't afraid to use him like that, and I don't see why that would change this year. He's a serviceable running back. He just doesn't have, even getting a lot of work. He just doesn't have that same upside as some other ones, even at 5,600.
Yeah, and obviously Cincinnati wants to win here. They can make the playoffs if they win out here. So obviously, a desire to win here, and I think Joe Burrow kind of wants it too, just given what he's faced this season and other quarterbacks eclipsing him. So Browns defense terrible, not great. 25 DVOA against the pass and 31 31st DVOA against opposing wide receiver one. So just more thumbs up for Jamar Chase there for me. Not that I needed a reason to play him, but the metrics look good. Game environment sets up pretty well. So,
yep. I'd also note the Browns are getting ownership because they're cheap and playing against DTR. But I think not having Jameis really limits their upside. Like having Jameis means more pass attempts, more likelihood for interceptions and pick sixes. DTR doesn't have the offensive upside that Winston does, but he also doesn't make the same level of mistakes. I guess I'm expecting this to be a much slower game and like a Browns maybe 24-10 type of win. And I'm not too interested in playing into ownership on this defense.
Yeah, if Njoku was playing, I think I'd have a lot more interest in him specifically for DTR, just because he's a big target who can sit there and catch the ball if you throw it to him. But without him, I think like Jerry Jeudy's not an elite receiver. Cedric Tillman may or may not be playing. Like it's going to be really hard for DTR to get these guys the balls. So yeah, not a ton of love for the Browns.
Mm-hmm.
Let us continue to Eagles at Commanders, 45.5 total field goal spread. This is a pretty good spot for me. I like Saquon Barkley quite a bit this week. He, like Lamar Jackson, has been pretty bipolar in his games. Lots of 30-plus games and a lot of games with single-digit fantasy points, but always has an elite ceiling. Workload's obviously great. The Eagles are probably dead last in PRE over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And probably going to continue. I think. Yeah, probably going to continue here against the Commanders. Are you seeing this game environment in a similar light?
Yeah, the only way I really see this game exploding would be if the Commanders get up early and the Eagles are forced to throw. But that's tough for me to see. The Eagles defense has just been so good the last few weeks. They moved up. I think they're a top 3 defense now in EPA. And so, yeah, I want to play this game, but it's just tough. I mean, Saquon obviously has the upside. Remember against Washington on Thursday night when he had like 2 long touchdown runs at the very end of the game and ended up smashing?
Yeah,
I'm remembering that.
Was it this season or last season when the Eagles and the Commanders played? It might have been last season when they were in the football team or something, but it seems like the games always kind of play up a bit, but I would say different stuff going on at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like last week, Saquon, kind of a dud game, but there was also like AJ Brown, crybaby last week. They threw him the ball. He's probably fine now. So like, do they just go back to pounding the rock 30 times a game? Probably. I mean, they clinch the division if they win. So I'd expect Sirianni to probably put on his serious hat and then play real football.
Yeah.
It always sucks. The tush push and the goal line work, like Saquon, you're not getting a ton of touchdown equity inside the 5. But that being said, it's still a fine play, and I'm going to have tons of them. The ceiling's incredible, and the Commanders are struggling against both the run and the pass. But given the Eagles' tendency to run, I think it's more likely that they just find success with Saquon and keep riding it.
Yep, I agree with you. For me, from the Eagles, this probably is just Saquon or nothing. I don't think I'll be getting too many sacks from this game. And I think there's way better spots to target, way better games to target in general. Although this should be like an interesting one for real life outcomes, and just in general, it should be a pretty competitive game.
Yeah, I think Commanders pieces as like one-offs or parts of mini correlations from Eagles stacks are kind of interesting. Like Dimey Brown, still really cheap and emerging as a wide receiver too. I played a ton of them last week, but last week came out 87% snap share. Not seeing a ton of targets, but again, the underlying metrics are there, and he's pretty cheap, and they're gonna probably have to throw the ball. Terry McLaurin's obviously had some pretty good games recently, mostly due to like touchdown equity and stuff, but probably a fine play. I just don't think I'm leaning back into Terry McLaurin here. He's going fairly unowned, which, is fine. There's not a ton of being owned from this game to begin with, but do you have any preferred Commanders?
Probably not against this Eagles secondary. I think the one I was getting some B-Rob, Brian Robinson, which I can get. That makes sense to me at 62, or what is he now? 6,200 or 60? Yeah, 6,200.
62.
Yeah, I don't mind that. But other than that, yeah, tough for me to get to McLaurin. The Eagles secondary has just been too good lately. And it really, if Washington wins this game, it's going to be on the legs of Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Brian Robinson did look not great against the Saints. His efficiency metrics weren't good, but he did have 24 opportunities and 75% of the snap share without Eckler. So as a volume back, that's really all you're asking for. You just want yards and touchdowns. Efficiency is never going to be great for him, but yeah, he's in the role, and there is past the points there. Hurts Barkley stack worth a shot is because some teams with good implied totals, not a super. Yeah, it's not a super strong QB slate overall. So I do agree that like getting a guy like Hurts at quarterback who probably has 8 to 10 point rushing floor alone, totally fine. And obviously he has the goal line work as well. Like playing both Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, you're basically getting all the team's rushing yards and all the team's rushing touchdowns. You're just hoping that there isn't a ton of passing volume or passing touchdowns.
Yeah, and Devontae in Hurts stacks, I don't mind either. He's kind of in that weird price range. They've had a lot of these receivers this year at 5,800, but I much prefer that than trying to do the Hurts Brown double stack where you're paying like $16,000 for a team that's going to try to run the ball 70% of the time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Throw in like a cheeky Grant Calcaterra, that tight end.
Yeah.
Good for 6.1 points, a touchdown, or 7.1 catch for 1 yard and a touchdown. Yeah, I think we're both on the same page for this game. It's Eagles defense and Eagles run game, likely like a 24-17 for me or something like that.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Let's move on to a pretty fun game here. Vikings at Seattle. I think there was injury stuff to consider here. No, that was
weather too.
Yeah. So obviously Vikings coming in with a great record, tied for lead in the NFC. The Seahawks have not looked good recently, but I think there are like little bits of shining spots of light in this game that do offer like tournament upside. JSN and Metcalf on the other side against the Minnesota secondary that's been a lot more vulnerable against the pass than they have the run. And now obviously Kenneth Walker's back, so there is a split backfield still for Seattle, and in general hasn't been super great for them. But do you have any sort of read as to how this game goes or which side you like to prefer?
I mean, JSN and Metcalf, I think they're probably fine at their salaries. But yeah, I mean, it's already baked into the total, but I do think the rain here is going to be a real issue for both of these teams. Only a 42.5 total. I mean, this one's I'm probably going to end up being a little under on both Jason and Metcalf, and I don't really know how much else I'm going to have in this game. I just don't. I just think there's way better spots we can go to this week that we don't have to force in Geno stacks.
Yeah, and Vikings are still pretty high in PROE, but the problem is that they just don't ever throw the ball enough for it to matter. Like the receivers are efficient on volume, and it's to a point where like they don't need to throw the ball. They control games through the defense, give Aaron Jones the ball, split with Cam Akers, and they're never really throwing enough in a game for it to actually blow up. And I'm not sure that Geno Smith is able to do that. Dealing with his knee injury, I think he's fine. He's practicing, but yeah, there's worries for me in this game that the Seahawks just aren't able to keep up and move the ball against the Vikings. Yeah,
and it's not like you're getting an ownership discount on the Seattle side of stacking games with JSN and Metcalf just because the salaries are good. I'd probably rather stack it on FanDuel where both those guys are more expensive and so they're unowned. But on DraftKings, I'd rather just get them as one-offs and probably not go too heavy into this game.
Yeah, and for me personally, like out of the late game window, like if I need a pivot or if I'm just playing the late slate in general, we'll talk about the Niners and the Dolphins, but that I'd rather allocate my salary and play into ownership there than in the Vikings game.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about from this game? Justin Jefferson's expensive, but he does excel against man coverage, so maybe a lean there. But again, he's expensive, and the Vikings just don't throw the ball a ton. So floor floor might be there, but the upside is limited to how the game environment plays out for them.
Yeah, depending on the weather, I think you can. I think you can. Vikings defense here at no ownership on DraftKings. Flores is just Flores' style, blitzing a lot, kind of creates a lot of variance. And Gino, we don't know how healthy Gino's legs are, so there's might be more opportunities for sacks and takeaways. So I don't mind that look. And also when you play that, you're fading the Metcalf and JSN ownership on DraftKings. So I don't mind, but yeah, the rest of this game is kind of mad to me.
Yeah, it's a good shout. Good shout on the defense there. Let's move on to Giants at Falcons. This game coming with a 42 total and quite a wide spread. Drew Lock still starting for the Giants, and the Falcons are trotting out Michael Penix, the junior version. Pretty ugly game. Do you like anything from this game, even as like a value option or a pay down spot?
Yeah, I mean the neighbors ownership is kind of crazy. I get it, but 26%, little rich for my blood, I think. I do kind of like Penix here, both naked and in the stacks. Even at that ownership, he's just so cheap. He's not going to run the ball very much. At least he didn't in college, and I don't expect him to at the pros either. But I mean, at that salary, like there's first of all, the Falcons have been running the ball a lot because they don't trust Kirk Cousins. I wouldn't be surprised to let them see them let Penix air the ball a little bit more and see what he has. And he still has four, five even really good weapons. And we've seen Ray, McLeod, Drake London, Mooney, and Bijan and Kyle Pitts all go off at different times of points this year. So it's not like this Falcons offense is devoid of weapons, and they do have a pretty healthy team total here. So I like getting Penix here, even if this ownership. I don't mind it at all. And it lets you fit in so many people. Like you can get Penix, and that makes it so much easier to fit Barkley and another elite piece if you wanted to.
Yeah, I was playing around with the Sims and looking at my lineups that had both Saquon Barkley and Jahmyr Gibbs in the same lineups, and a lot of the stacks that were coming up to the top were Atlanta stacks, and it's probably just, again, a product of the pricing of them and also relative upside of each player. Like Mooney has a ceiling. Ray, even to an extent, has a ceiling. Drake London, obviously a pretty consistent target getter. So I do see there's viable pass there. In general, I think that there's a lot of pass for this game just gets really stinky and doesn't play up really at all. Like on the Giants side specifically. The neighbor's ownership is kind of weird to me. He has seen like 10 plus targets in all of his healthy games or most of them, but he hasn't done much with them. And I don't have like tons of faith in the Giants O line here, even against like a poo-poo Falcon second, defensive line. But even Tyrone Tracy to an extent just struggles with negative game environments. He's not getting many opportunities outside of like early down situation stuff. There's not a lot for me to like here. Drew Lock, maybe, like he has rushing upside and scrambling upside, obviously, but who are you going to pair him with? Are you going to pair him with the relatively chalky Malik Neighbors, who people are already playing without Drew Lock?
Yeah, no, I mean Wandale, I guess for cheap, that'd be the ultra cheap stack. But even then, I'd rather just play Penix and bring back with Wandale. Just not much. Neighbors, I totally get it. Elite talent, elite role, but man, that's and good price too. But man, 26% is pretty tough for me to swallow on this with Drew Lock throwing in the ball.
Yeah, it's tough. And then on the other side, like you said, I'm not quite sure what the Falcons want to do with Michael Penix out there. If they're trying to like throw him into the fire and get him ready, letting him maybe air it out a bit more than they have, but even if they continue giving Bijan like his 23, 24 attempts a game, it's still not something I really love here against the Giants. And there's always goal line stuff, and there's always the Tyler Algier thing nagging in the back of the head. So not a lot of love for the backfield for the Atlanta side for me.
Yeah, I pretty much am going to be looking at, I think in the Sims I ran earlier, I was about even with the field on Penix, and then I was a little over on Mooney. I think I had about 5%. And almost no London. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because Mooney, you get a couple long passes. He's a classic inverse correlation, same game parlay guy where he gets like 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. And that may not be enough at 5,400 to get in the optimal lineup on DraftKings, but with Penix at 4,500, if he does that with Mooney, then he's almost optimal off the bat. So I do think that makes a lot of sense to me. And I got almost no London as well, and that's fine with me. I mean, he's like a glorified tight end, and how he gets his production, a lot of underneath stuff, he needs volume to get there, and the volume isn't guaranteed with Penix, right? And Penix can be optimal without having a lot of volume.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And like, I don't know, just seeing 12% for Bijan Robinson when he's 8,100, and when you've got Jahmyr Gibbs at 7,300, and obviously Jahmyr Gibbs is coming with more ownership, but like, I just don't see how I could, comfortably click Bijan for $900 more or $800 more than Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, agreed there. There was something else. It's also worth noting, I think, with Penix is that he's like 25. He's like Bo Nix's age. He's old. So he was in college for a long time. So he's not like your typical like 21-year-old coming in here. So I mean, obviously it's an adjustment going college to the pros, but I don't expect it to be as dramatic for him compared to other quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely reserved for probably larger field stuff for me. I'm playing a lot of single entry, 3 max, small field stuff, and I probably will not be getting too much of this game at all, but I definitely like taking stabs in larger field stuff.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Let's discuss Rams at Jets. We were talking a bit before the show about, or maybe at the start of the show, about last week, the Aaron Rodgers doubles. They simmed out really well. We just didn't play them. Are we going back for round 2 here against the Rams?
Yeah, you can. I mean, like I've said it now for a couple of weeks in a row, how the Jets they're a bad offense, but they're a good one to target because we know who's going to produce if they score. It's going to be one of or two of Devontae, Breece Hall, and Garrett Wilson. So yeah, I don't mind going to it. Yeah, it's not exactly the most fun. I'll say that. And the Rams defense has improved a little bit too, so it's not like this is going to be a walk in the park for Aaron Rodgers here.
Yeah, like we talked about with the Seahawks game too. They are playing in MetLife, so there's considerations there as far as like wind and rain and just the turf conditions in general at MetLife aren't great. But the Jets have been paced up recently over the past 3 weeks, third in PRE over the last 3 weeks, and midfield in pace of play. So Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball quite a bit each game, 36 pass attempts over the last 6. So there's definitely there's upside here. I mean, I was having some mini correlations here with Puka Nacua coming back with either Adams or Wilson. Do you have a favorite out of the 2 Jets receivers, or is it just like basically you play both and treat them as one pricey receiver?
I kind of like that idea, especially in Rodgers stacks of just doing doubles and not singles. Yeah, I don't really have much of an opinion about which one I prefer. It kind of comes down to ownership and what fits in the lineup in that building.
Yeah, and ownership here is relatively suppressed. Really, only Nacua garnering over 10%. Devontae Adams at 7, Kyron at 9. There's a lot of ceiling pieces in this game environment, which on paper doesn't look to be that great. It's sort of a middling game total, tighter spread, but you've got Nacua, Kyron, Kupp, Devontae, Wilson, and Breece Hall, all capable of 30-point fantasy games. And, it could be a spot where you get to it and the field doesn't again. I guess I was expecting a bit more steam, on the Jets coming into this week after the Rodgers performance, but I guess people are still kind of weary to play that.
Yeah, I think people are just sick of the Jets in general.
Yeah.
And we've heard about them for 5 months now, and we're still hearing about them. So,
yeah. I don't know if FK is still here, Coolers, but he liked Kyron Williams as sort of a lower owned spend up running back options, and I like that as well. He's right around he's right around that same price as Jahmyr Gibbs, so potential squeeze candidate as far as like, oh well, last guy in, who am I going to click in? Most people are probably going to lean Jahmyr there, and on paper obviously better matchup for him. He's getting a huge workload, but Kyron Williams still with a great workload as well. He's still the workhorse back for the Rams and has touchdown equity, scores a bunch, and has that upside as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of running backs in that 7 to 8K range that even higher with Saquon that I want to get to, which makes me even more inclined to go cheap at quarterback.
Yeah, I like that. Anything else from this game? I mean, you pretty much know who you're going to play on both sides of the ball if you want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, Puka obviously is matchup proof. He'll move around enough where it's not really a concern. That's I mean, yeah, you're dead on. We kind of know where the production is going to be from this game, so you're kind of you play the offense and just hope for the best.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, you do get an ownership discount and a pretty hefty salary discount, but it's been the Puka show in LA. So I think that they're both fine to play. Cooper Cup's a thinner play with upside still, but Puka has an incredible floor and ceiling combo.
Yeah. Cup has been on the Debo level of decline this year for some last few weeks, especially. I don't know if he's hurt or what.
Do you have an issue with Kyren and Puka together, or are you like forcing something from the Jet side if you're playing both Kyren and Puka?
If I had both, yeah, I'd probably have to. I mean, I would only well, the problem is like Kyren doesn't really get receiving touchdowns, right? And so like I wouldn't do it like in a Ram stack with Stafford. I'd probably choose one or the other. I think I would choose one or the other, and then I would probably, if I was going to play both, it would have to be with the Rodgers stack coming back.
Yeah, I think the only way I would play both Puka and Kyren is like in the Rodgers triple stack and just pray that this game scores like 60, and it's what you had to have.
I mean, it could, like I wouldn't rule that out. And especially this week, just feels pretty gross in general. And there's definitely a case to be made for overloading on one game and just hoping it's the one that gets to 55 points and that's enough.
Well, I mean, that was a scenario last week, right? Like the Jets game against the Jags was one of the ickier games on the slate, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 at least better game environments that I had on a ton of my rosters, and this is the one that turned out needing to have. So,
yep,
that is the game we play.
Indeed.
Here we are talking about the Lions. Obviously, Monty out for the season. That gives Jahmyr Gibbs full control of the Lions' backfield that's already been elite so far up into this year. And now they get a cakewalk matchup against the Bears, who rank near last in most rushing defensive metrics, yards per carry allowed, yards before contact, all that stuff. The O-line, defensive line matchup here is going to be insane as well. I think the Lions O-line injuries are fine. Like they practiced this week, so I think they're good there on that front. They might just get 2 to 3 yards per carry before Jahmyr even touches anybody on the defense.
Yeah, my suspicion is that we're way under projecting Gibbs' ownership, even at 7,500. People have been waiting all year long to be able to just choose one Lions running back, and now they get to, and it's in a nut spot against Chicago. So I'm expecting him to come in closer to 45, 50%. And in small to medium field stuff, I'd even say higher, like 60 or 70. It's just too easy to just say, okay, I want to play one player from this game. I'm just going to play Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's it. And that's just the easiest click of the week, I think. It's just tough to get away from, right? Even at that ownership, it's easier to fade on FanDuel because you can kind of just fade touchdowns, but the role for Jahmyr Gibbs is like a Saquon level you would expect in this game.
Yeah, and you get him for cheap.
Yeah, it makes him like $1,500 under salary or whatever the term is there. So just tough to get away from. I think it's one I don't really have a strong stance on. Like, the Bears are going to shut down Jahmyr Gibbs or Jahmyr Gibbs is going to score 4 touchdowns. But it's kind of one I'm going to let the Sims kind of decide for me on how much exposure I get, and I have a feeling I'm going to get a lot.
Yeah, I fully expect him to come in at that 50% mark or higher, especially in the smaller stuff that I'm playing. I'm totally fine eating that. I think 50 to 70% is honestly probably not enough for Jahmyr Gibbs in this matchup for his workload at his salary. I don't see how you just don't play Jahmyr Gibbs this week. It feels like, you want to be cute and fade ownership, and maybe the production goes through the air. Maybe it's not Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe with Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty healthy, Campbell likes to run them in this scenario, and then with only one of them healthy, he wants to save him for the playoffs, and they'll start running out like Craig Reynolds or something. But I don't see it. I think there's so many reasons to get to Jahmyr here, and it's the ownership there is fine.
Who was the running back for the Detroit? I'll look him up. In the preseason, is he active? He kind of got a lot of hype in Sione Vaki from Utah. Is he projected to be playing? I wonder if they just try to mix him a little bit too in this game and get him.
Yeah,
he hasn't played well this year.
Looks like ETR's got him for like 1.5 maybe 3 to 5 opportunities. I kind of agree with you. Like, as long as the Lions are able to kind of maintain a healthy lead here, I do expect like Jahmyr Gibbs. He's obviously not going to play like 90% of snaps and handle 90% of opportunities, but even with like his 60 to 65% of the opportunities on the offense at his price, probably worth playing. And then it's to what extent does Dan Campbell mix in Craig Reynolds and this Sione Vaki guy? And to me, I don't think it's enough to warrant playing them. Obviously, the game script can go different. Things can happen, but I just don't see any room for the other running backs on the Lions.
Yeah, I don't think they're playable, but I think as a kind of like just talking myself into the bear case for Jahmyr Gibbs, other than he gets hurt, like what is the way that he fails? And one would be that everybody's over projecting his workload here, which I'm not even saying that's what they're doing. Just trying to talk through some different scenarios of how Jahmyr Gibbs could fail, even though obviously he's 7,500. If he just has 100 yards rushing, it's not enough. So yeah, it's just a tough spot to get away from in general.
Yeah, I agree. And Bears obviously way more vulnerable against the run than they are against the pass. Lions are totally fine running the ball and not throwing. So probably another Goff 20 pass attempt game, 18 for 18 game for Jared Goff.
Yeah.
And they probably win pretty handily here. I do like on the other side, I like getting the Caleb Williams stacks this week. I had a lot of them grading out well. Some of it's probably due to just correlation because I've got Jahmyr Gibbs projected well, getting a lot of Gibbs, and that's probably correlating well with opposing stuff. But in general, I do like the Caleb Williams stacks here. Obvious rushing upside. And then you've got the trio of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, who are sort of split equally in target share. However, it's been Moore and Allen who have been producing more on it, but I still have not given up on Rome Odunze. He will be featured in my Caleb Williams stacks.
Yeah.
What do you like here from the Bears?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did not want to play Caleb stacks. I just remember the Thanksgiving game. It was a real stinker in the first half, and then they were kind of forced to the ball, ended up throwing the ball like 40 times, and Caleb Sachs got there. And so I kind of wonder what the Bears' game plan is going to be here. I don't know what the volume may be here, but we're expecting the Bears to be trailing, and the Caleb Sachs just sim out too well. And like as pretty much everything is just Keenan Allen, DJ Moore doubles that sim well. But man, it's really tempting to just not play Rome Odunze here at 1% ownership versus Keenan Allen at 17%. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think through this one for how I'm gonna play this stack.
Yeah, I agree. It is really tempting to click on Rome there. Like he's getting snaps and he's getting targets. It's just he just hasn't been producing with them. So it's a good a spot as any. And that Roschon Johnson's back for the Bears here in the backfield too. It just kind of takes DeAndre Swift down a peg for me. Not that I was playing him against the Lions run defense anyway, but something to consider if you were thinking of maybe playing this game a bit differently. But to me, there's really only one way to play this game, and that's like a Caleb Williams stat coming back with Jahmyr Gibbs most likely. But I can see cases for like Amon-Ra at low ownership or Jameson Williams at lower ownership as well, because they do give Jameson Williams some of like the gadget plays and end arounds and sweeps and stuff. So like there may be merit to that, like with the 49ers when it didn't play out, but potentially using Debo as more of a gadget guy and a rusher with Garendo. But you could see a similar situation here, maybe not. Just different scenarios you might want to play.
Yeah, I was going to just point out that another way that Jahmyr Gibbs possibly fails is he gets a lot of yardage on the ground, but doesn't score any touchdowns. And the Lions were targeting Amon-Ra a ton in the red zone earlier this year. I think he had like 7 straight games with a touchdown. And so at 2% ownership versus 50% plus, that's definitely very intriguing, right? And I mean, it's not that I'm saying the projections are wrong here, but there is a range of outcomes where, and just scenarios where Gibbs does get the production, but it's not enough to be optimal. And especially because we've been talking about all these 7 to 8K running backs that we like. And Amon-Ra catches a couple touchdowns in the red zone and ends up being a little higher scoring than Gibbs. And I also think that's a little more viable on FanDuel, where even though you only get half point per reception, that does hurt the floor a little bit of Jahmyr Gibbs. And you're just hoping for the touchdowns to go your way with the Lions.
Yeah, I agree with you. Same page there. Are there anything else you want to cover here on this game before we move on?
How many? What do you think about DJ Moore and Allen at that ownership as without Caleb Williams? It's just one-offs. You still fine with those?
I don't think I'll do it just because of the way that I'm building rosters. Because I'm going to have so many Caleb Williams stacks with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, it doesn't make sense for me to play them without him. So in my rosters without Caleb Williams, I likely will not play any of like the DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze stuff, just because I have so much exposure already in my Caleb stacks. And if they're going to do well, my Caleb stacks are going to do well. If they don't, there's just no reason for me to play them outside of the Williams stack, I don't think.
Yeah, and Cooler's made another good point about the Lions are kind of the anti-Chiefs and Eagles, where they're more than happy to run the score up in the fourth quarter. And while those teams are like the Chiefs especially are going to tend to just sit in the ball with the lead, the Lions aren't really like that. They like to score points. So that's definitely another reason to be bullish about Jahmyr Gibbs here.
Yeah, I could see throwing in like a Jared Goff passing stack and something large field just to kind of flip the script a bit on the ownership. But
yeah,
for the most part, it's Caleb and Jahmyr for me.
Yep.
Okie dokie. Let's move on to Niners at Dolphins. My favorite afternoon slate here. A lot of good options on both sides of the ball. We've got Miami at home, who have typically scored a lot better at home than they have on the road, averaging 27 plus in home games since their bye. And now they will have no Jalen Waddle, unfortunately, but that may lead to more weak stuff. I'm hesitant to think it will. I'm thinking it's probably more Johnny Smith targets and like Malik Washington stepping in for some work. What are you seeing from the Dolphins here?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's A-Chain. It starts with A-Chain. There's a reason why he's the highest projected player in this game. I don't really have a great feel for this game at all. I mean, Brock Purdy is playing for a contract here as well, so you would expect the Niners to kind of showcase him a little bit. He's been pretty mediocre the last few weeks, and I think they're going to want to try to, at least him especially, is going to want to try to end the season strong. But man, both these coaches like to run the ball. They don't really speed the game up very much. So, I mean, the way I see this game shooting out would be Miami gets the lead, and then the Niners are forced to throw the ball a lot, and that's Shanahan's more willing to abandon the run in that case, especially with the lack of running backs right now. So that's kind of the path I see this game shooting out, but I don't know. I just don't have a great feeling for this game at all. And I'm even a Niners fan, so that just goes to show how messed up the season is.
Well, yeah, I mean, they aren't going to be able to run the ball really at all, right? Like Grendo out, that's now the fourth running back that they've torched this season. And I don't think they're going to let Patrick Taylor really do much of anything at all. Like they're going to give him the ball, obviously, to run the ball, but this is going to be a Purdy pass show for me. I think it's 40 plus attempts for Purdy, likely trailing, in my opinion. I think A-Chan's going to be able to exploit the Niners defense. I love like a Purdy and Jennings and Kittle stack and coming back with A-Chan. I think that's generally how it's going to play. I think the Niners are just going to have to be aggressive and throw the ball no matter what. They're not going to get anything done on the ground with Patrick Taylor.
Yeah, I don't hate Taylor as a value option on DraftKings where PPR matters, just because that's been his role in college and the NFL. It's just a pass catching running back. So I don't mind that, I guess, at his ownership for 5,200. But yeah, I do think it's going to have to be a lot of throws for Brock Purdy, which at least at his ownership, it's a little bit intriguing. I don't know. This is just a tough game for me. And I also think it's worth watching for Nick Bosa's status. He's still questionable. I have no idea if he's going to play or not. There's not really an incentive anymore for him to play, but maybe he will anyway. And if he does, obviously that hurts the Miami's offensive upside just because he's such a good pass rusher. So if he's out, I'll be way more interested in stacking up the Miami side. But if he's in, I'm going to be I'd rather just play the Purdy side and A-Chain. And maybe some Jonnu as well.
Yeah, I do have some interest in like running out a Tua stack, but for me, the interest and the way that I think this game produces like a fantasy scoring game that you need to have is the Niners need to be in the game, and if they're in the game, it's probably just Purdy and Jennings, maybe Kittle nuking, and then I like the idea of A-Chan on the other side. If Miami's ahead, they're going to give him the ball. If they're behind, he's going to get passes. It's a really good spot for A-Chan.
Yeah, I mean Debo, my guy.
No,
he almost carried them to the 2022 Super Bowl whenever they lost to the Rams in the NFC Championship that year. And I don't know what's up with him this year. I don't know if he's just washed completely, if he's old, if he has some nagging injuries that I'm sure at the end of the year we'll hear like, he's about a bad ribs and bad ankle all year long or whatever. But yeah, he just hasn't looked right to me. I wish he wasn't owned. I mean, 11% ownership on DraftKings. I understand why he's so cheap. But man, I just don't know what to make of him right now. I want to play Debo. I've been playing him every week, and he's cost me every week. It's like at some point I'm gonna have to send him a bill.
Yeah, I mean he's sort of reaching that age, right? He's reaching that magic 30 number for receivers, and I don't know. Is it the state of the offense? Is it like mental?
Especially the way he was used earlier in his career too, where he's almost like a running back half the time, and he was a running back.
He's taking a lot more contact. He loves taking contact too. He loves it.
Yeah, so I just don't know what to do with him. I mean, if I'd probably, he is interesting, right? Just because like, what else are they going to do running the ball? I mean, and he can run in between the tackles as well. It's not like he's only a perimeter receiver. He just, even last week on Thursday night, he looked so bad every time they got him the ball. He just had no explosiveness. I don't know. I don't know what's up with him. But I mean, I'm not going to complain if I end up with some Purdy stacks when I'm in my Sunday lineup set, Purdy Devo stacks.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't really have a read between like Malik Washington or River Craycraft as like the next man up for the Dolphins. You can play them. I think they're probably fine. They're larger field stuff for me for sure. If I'm playing something from the Dolphin side, it's going to either be Tyreek Hill, Achane, or Johnny Smith.
Yep. I also don't mind Miami onslaughts here with Tua, Achane, Jonnu, and Tyreek. Even if you really wanted to get weird, I mean, this has just been a total season from hell from the Niners. It wouldn't be surprise me. The season ended last week on Thursday. It wouldn't surprise me to see them come out here and just lay a total egg and lose by 40. So I don't mind that look as well. But yeah, just in general, just a tough game for me to really figure out what the hell's going to happen.
Yep, I agree with you there. Did I lose my ordering? Oh, no, there are Cardinals at the Panthers. Bryce Young's looked honestly pretty good recently. He is going to be without Xavier Legette in this game, which hurts him quite a bit, opens up more stuff for Thielen as like the primary beneficiary, and then it brings in the Jalen Cokers, David Moores of the world into
Cokeheads
some
consideration.
Yeah, maybe I can play him again. He'll get the snowflake on my lineup. I'll win the power sweep. All will be good in the world. For me, this more just sets up as like a James Conner game going against the Panthers defense that struggles mightily against the run. James Conner has a great workload in this Arizona offense. Tons of games so far this season with 22, 25 plus TK performances, and then obviously the touchdown equity is great for him as well.
Yeah, I'm not exactly breaking news here, but I really like this game, especially Conner, like you said. Panthers' run defense has been terrible all year, and Arizona's had a real commitment to running the ball and featuring Conner. So, and I think Demarcado and who's the other backup running back for Arizona? They're both hurt. Yeah, I think they're both out this week. So, I mean, there's just nobody behind. Is DJ Dallas behind James Conner? I don't think he's going to be worked in very much. He might get some passing game work, but very little, I would expect. So, yeah, the way I'll be approaching this is load up on James Conner, probably be under on Chuba and over on Bryce Young stacks with Thielen and Coke for the Coke heads out there.
Yeah, it's a similar situation to James Conner on the other side of the ball too. Chuba Hubbard has played like 98% of snaps for the Panthers. They don't have anybody else either. So, and then without Legette, you get a bit more concentration into Adam Thielen, who's probably the number one for me clearing away. Then you've got like a 2A, 2B, and 2C scenario with like Coker, Moore, and like even to an extent Tremble or Jatavian Sanders. But for me, it's Adam Thielen and Chuba Hubbard on the Panthers side. Maybe a little bit of Coker if you want to get there and save some money, but not a ton of love for me.
What do you think about Marvin Harrison Jr.? I mean, CeeDee Lamb went off last week against this Carolina secondary. I mean, they don't have much of a chance of stopping anybody, this defense, so he's pretty cheap. You know, he's cost me as well. Him and Debo, I'm going to have to reach out to their agents this year.
I mean, the difference for me there is Dallas was a lot more willing to throw the ball than I think the Cardinals will be. And in general, I think it's just going to be a James Conner running performance here. Marvin, he's got weird home and away splits. Not that I really care about it too much, but Marvin Harrison a lot better at home than he is on the road. And I just don't see it being really necessary here. Like if I'm going to a pass catcher, it's probably going to be some tight end stuff for me. Trey McBride still touchdownless on the season, even though he's caught like 100 footballs. Kind of crazy. Potential. We should get like the ultimate. What's like the ultimate touchdown regression we could get for Trey McBride? Like a 6 touchdown game for him or something ridiculous. Like people are talking about like regressing to the mean on touchdowns. Well, I mean, I think he's about as far away from the mean as you can get right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind doing the Kyler stacks with McBride and Harrison as well. I mean, pretty much just attacking this entire Arizona offense. And the nice thing about the Kyler stacks, even though he is somewhat owned and McBride's owned, is you're getting off of that Conner chalk. So that's an interesting way to play it too if you're already playing Gibbs. But I mean, I definitely want to get a lot of pieces from this game. I think I also am still pretty bullish on Bryce Young, even though the offense didn't look that good last week.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of upside here too. Just in general, you got like good options on both sides as far as stacking. If you want to go there, I think it's a pretty good idea. Ronnie's saying the Sims are liking the cheap tight ends. Yeah, I mean, in general, I think the Sims and optimizers this week are going to prefer a lot of value pieces. We saw it on the Browns. We're seeing it a bit here on the some of the cheaper Panthers guys. There's just so many good pay up options at running back and receiver this week that it's kind of hard. I think this is going to be a really high scoring week as far as you're going to have a lot of ceiling performances from studs. And you might need, like 4 to 6 to 8 points from one of these cheaper guys just as a way to fit in more of those studs.
Yeah. But I mean, like Ronnie said, it is a good way to get different if you're playing McBride. It does make some sense, especially if you played McBride with a more expensive quarterback, which I think if people are playing McBride, they're either doing it with Kyler or they're playing it with like Penix or another cheap quarterback. So playing McBride with a expensive quarterback is interesting. Yeah, just I think this should be a pretty high scoring game. I think I like the over at 47. I feel like both teams should be able to move the ball here, and just in general, I think this is going to be a pretty high scoring DFS week.
Are you scared of being under Chuba given his pass game work?
Yeah, but I mean, there's so many other. It's not like we're getting a huge salary discount here, and there's so many other running backs in that price range that I want to get to. I mean, Gibbs and Connor alone this week, I feel. Even with the pass catching floor, I feel more confident in both. Better matchups, in my opinion. So, yeah, I mean, a little bit, obviously, but I'd rather play those guys, and I'd rather pay up for Saquon, for example.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it in the next game we hit on too. But as far as spend up tight ends go, there's a name we haven't talked about yet that I think is really intriguing this week. Do you have anything we want to wrap up on this game before we go to that one? I believe it's the last one on the slate.
Mm-mm.
So. Really good segue there for us. Oh, there's 2 more. Damn it. Okay. Well, we'll talk about this game then.
Well, we got to talk about this because this was getting like 50% Anthony Richardson a second ago. So
yeah. Well, he's back. Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
Mason Rudolph also will be starting over Will Levis for the Titans. I think it's got to be an upgrade for them at this point. I don't know what's going on with Will Levis and the turnover machine or like the turnover monkey symbol clapping he's got going on in his brain, but like it's incredible. With Mason Rudolph under center, I do think that the Titans are going to be able to sustain their drives and maybe convert some of these red zone drives that stall out. And then on the other side, you've got Anthony Richardson, who's capable of running the ball. You've got good stacking options with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell too this week, coming in really cheap and unowned. What sort of pieces are you liking from this game?
I'd almost compare the Titans thing to what the Browns are doing, where the upside, the ceiling for the offense isn't there with Levis, and just in general, like the game environment, the ceiling isn't there with Mason Rudolph instead of Levis. But I think they're probably more likely to win because Rudolph probably isn't going to commit the same stupid turnovers that Levis was guaranteed to every week. Right. That also just in general hurts my feeling on like stacking this game up. But like I said, I was getting a ton of Richardson stacks, and it was like Richardson with Downs especially. I don't mind that look at all. But and also with A.D. Mitchell, as you said, I don't mind either one of those plays. I probably wouldn't do Richardson doubles. I think it's just Richardson and one running back, or Richardson by himself are both fine. I mean, he's only 5,400, and the rushing floor is just too good for him. And he's just an easy way to play Richardson, and you can play pretty much anybody else in the slate, just like with Penix. And he has the rushing floor that Penix doesn't have.
Yeah, I think it's probably important to watch the injury report for the Titans specifically. I think Nick Westbrook-Akina's status is up in the air still, and Tyjae Spears as well. If either of them don't go, I think it gives me a lot more interest in like a Calvin Ridley or a Tony Pollard play. Like you said, I think that Mason Rudolph is an upgrade to an extent that it allows the Titans to actually score points and move the football down the field. Like, I don't think he's necessarily a much better quarterback. I think just that the offensive unit as a whole is going to be more efficient with him under center.
Yeah, that could be. I just like the Levis turnover upside, and like he was throwing deep balls to Ridley and stuff, to where it kind of gives the games a lot more floor and ceiling. And it gives the other defense obviously a lot more ceiling too. Yeah, I mean, you know what's going to happen? It's going to be Westbrook-Akine is out, and everybody's fired up to play Calvin Ridley. And then it's going to be Chigaquanko is going to be the guy who inexplicably gets wide open down the field. Nobody covers him. Takes over the Nick Westbrook role.
I mean, Ridley's splits between like zone and man are pretty staggering as well. And against zone, that the cover 3 that the Colts like to run, he has pretty bad stats. So I mean, there's reasons not to like him. There's probably reasons to like him, especially if like Nick Westbrook's out. Who are they going to throw the ball to besides him? Like, is it Tyler Boyd? Probably not. And then on the other side, you've got Jonathan Taylor, who again has a great workload, but with Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor is not going to get any work inside the 5. Maybe a run or two, but it's really just the Anthony Richardson show rushing when they get that close.
Yep, it's a lot like the Eagles situation, just worse players.
Yeah, it's discount Eagles.
Yeah.
With Alec Pierce out on the Colts side, like we said, A.D. Mitchell's back into the mix of things. He'll be working on the perimeter mostly. Again, A. Richard deep ball, maybe he gets there, maybe it doesn't. Who knows? But at 3,800, it's probably worth a shot. There's upside there with A.D. Mitchell. So, do you
Yeah. I just think like with Richardson, these receivers have no floor, so it's all ownership dependent for me and just kind of what fits in lineups. But I mean, they also have a huge ceiling because Richardson is just willing to throw 40 yards down the field. And, he's either completing those or he's not. And if he's not, all these receivers are going to give you goose eggs. So like if Downs gets seen, for example, I'll probably be off of him and more onto Pittman or onto A.D. Mitchell. If A.D. Mitchell gets seen as a cheap receiver, I'd much more be likely to play Downs. But I'll just kind of see where ownership is on Saturday night before I decide, or Sunday morning.
Yeah, relatively for me, like the paths to this game having elite upside are honestly really narrow. But I think there are scenarios where it does happen. But for the most part, I think both of these teams are ranked pretty high or pretty low in PROE. They tend to run the ball if they can. And in general, I think both teams are trying to minimize or like put their quarterbacks in scenarios where they can't make mistakes. Both teams have been dealing with woeful quarterback play, and I think in general they're going to want to keep the ball on the ground and just give their quarterbacks like the most opportunity they can to maintain possession of the football.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Now we can talk about one of my favorite tight end slates or plays on the slate. Brock
Which
Bowers.
one? Brenton Strange?
No, Brock Bowers. No. Although I did play Brenton Strange last week, and I came close to nailing a single entry or the 3 max. Came in like I don't know, like 13th or 20th or somewhere around there with a Brenton Strange lineup. So I will thank him for that. But I mean, I get it. I get why he's popular this week. You've got the Jags against the Raiders. This is the lowest total on the slate by far. I think I said that before, but this has got to be the lowest total. You have movable object versus stoppable force game, and honestly, I don't hate it. We get AOC back, right? Yep. Raiders really concentrated offense. The backfield's really messy, but I wasn't going to play the backfield anyway. It's going to be mostly Alexander Madison, followed up with a little bit of Amir Abdullah. He's never really been like a super involved guy. He's always been more of like a gadget sort of guy, mixing in as change of pace stuff. But I like the Raiders side of the ball here. Both defenses are really bad. Pressure rates for both aren't great. I believe Max Crosby's out as well, which just gives more time for the other side of the ball if you like the Mac Jones stuff, which I don't hate. Brian Thomas Jr. and Brenton Strange have looked really good. Stack did pretty good last week, and the Raiders are a unit that gives up a lot of points. And if there's no Max Crosby to get pressure on Mac Jones, I think that gives him a lot more opportunities to get the ball down the field.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, the Jags have been running a lot of no huddle with Mac Jones, and it's been intentional. Like Doug Peterson, who's somehow still employed, talked after the game last week about how they want to keep running no huddle with Mac Jones because he seems more comfortable in it, gets him more in a rhythm. So I do think this game could exceed expectations here in terms of pace. It just comes down to, can either one of these quarterbacks actually produce with the fast pace, right? And I mean, we've seen both of them do it at times, but it's pretty tough to trust either one of them.
Yeah, I'm totally in the same boat as you, but I think like we just talked about the Colts game. To me, this game has way more upside pass and a lot more attractive stacking options than that game does. And we are seeing ownership come in here on some of the popular guys, but the quarterbacks are relatively low owned. So a lot of people are playing these guys as 1 or 2 offs or as value options, and they aren't stacking them as part of a game environment, which to me kind of indicates to me that if I'm playing this game, I kind of want to play both sides of the ball and play a lot of it. And to me, that my favorite way, I'm going to pound this home, but I love the AOC double with Bowers and Myers, and then coming back with somebody like Brian Thomas or coming back with somebody like Brenton Strange. Even Parker Washington going to step into a bigger role as well, and he's cheap. So I don't know. You have a preferred way to stack this?
No, exactly what you just said. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I definitely do think that this game has a lot more upside than the 40 total indicates. And yeah, I expect to be getting to quite a bit of this. The Brenton Strange ownership is just really tough for me, the 28% or whatever. But I totally understand why it's like that. And I was right around the field there in the Sims I ran earlier. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Coolers with a good point that the Raiders are a lot like Rams. If you like Myers did like the dollar store puka roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I really don't mind getting to this. Now it's just tough to play these guys. I think more as one offs. Like at 28%, Brenton Strange is a one off, and Brian Thomas Jr. is a 20% on one off. I understand why they're that owned, but I'm like you said, I'm much more likely to attack this game as a stack than hitting these guys as one offs.
Yeah, Rohit asked in our Discord, what about the ETN matchup? I mean, the Raiders' defense isn't good, but they're a lot worse as a coverage unit, as a secondary than they are against the run. And then you also have to deal with the fact that ETN and Tank are still splitting opportunities, are still splitting workload, and it's less likely for me to want to play that because if ETN or Tank does have a good game, it's likely slowing down the pace of the game. It's likely not reaching the ceiling that we want it to. So for me, attacking this game, it's all about the passing environment. It's all about getting that early, splash either from Mac Jones or Aiden O'Connell, and then hoping that the game rides out from there. So I'm not going to be attacking the running games from either side here. I'm just hoping for a fast pace of play sort of thing, even like playing defenses against quarterbacks here.
Yeah, bro, he's gonna love this one. But what about Michael Meyer as a extremely cheap punt? Who he still has a role even with Brock Bowers. They run a lot of 2 tight end stuff with him. He's pretty involved even in no huddle, even like the 2-minute drill stuff they run. At 2,900, I don't really hate it. Like if I really need the money.
Yeah, he's fine. I mean, I think Brock Bowers is clearing away my favorite tight end on this slate, so it's gonna be hard for me to click Mayer over him. But I see why you would want to. It's a good cheap tight end pivot off of Brenton Strange, but I think if you're gonna pivot off of Brenton, it's gotta be to like a higher price guy. And Brock Bowers he slots in there for me.
Yep, makes sense.
Do you like BTJ as a one-off given his ownership, or are you kind of confining him more to game environment stuff?
Yeah, I much prefer him as in the game stacks. Not because inherently when you play him, you're trusting that Mac Jones is going to actually come through for you, and so I'd much rather play him with Mac Jones or with Aiden O'Connell, kind of implying this game is going to shoot out a little bit. As a one-off, I don't love it as much, especially that ownership. I think there's other receivers in that same range that we can get to with our own that have just as much upside.
I tend to agree with you. If Brian Thomas Jr. has a slate winning game, this game likely plays higher than it's expected to, and there's a lot of really good ownership spots you can attack here.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And then let's talk about the FanDuel Sunday Night Hammer real quick before we get out of here. And we've got, if I can find it. Wait, this is not the 14 gamer. It's 12.
No. Yeah.
12 gamer. Here we go. There we go. Bucks at Dallas. I think on FanDuel, this game is actually really important and something you should probably pay attention to. One for late slop, obviously, but I also think that the game environment in general is a really good one to tackle.
Yeah,
for
really high
FanDuel.
total. I think it might be the highest this week, isn't it? 48.
Yeah, 48.5 is nothing to shake a stick at. Dallas looked a lot better recently. I don't know if their success will continue, but we did see some success for CeeDee Lamb in the passing game as a whole. And the Bucs secondary, now that they're matching up against, typically tends to have games play up in pace. They're allowing some of the most points in the league to and against. So in general, these Bucs games like to play up fast. You've got Mike Evans as a really good option here against the Dallas secondary, and then there's also CeeDee Lamb on the other side. I can load projections in here quick so we can take a look at ownership, but in general,
Rico Dowdle is really the one getting all the ownership in this game. He's projecting for about mid-20s right now. He's looked much better the last couple of weeks, but again, one of those games was against Carolina, so I don't know how much stock you want to put into that. He's the big piece from this game. I think everybody's going to be kind of slotting in.
Okay, yeah, I see that now. Rico Dowdle at 20-ish%, Evans at 8%, CD at 4-ish. I mean, I even kind of like playing some of the Tampa Bay backfield stuff here against a Dallas run D that's giving up a lot of points and a lot of rushing yards. It's hard to pick one over the other again because we're still dealing with the Bucky Irving, Rashad White stuff, even bits of Sean Tucker mixed in. I think they're probably fine to play and mix in here. They're definitely late swap candidates for me on FanDuel.
Yeah, Dallas has been by far the worst defense against the run this year. So yeah, I really like Bucky. A pretty low ownership here. He's the one, in my opinion, with way more rushing upside than Rashad White. Rashad White typically gets there with passes. So yeah, I like Bucky Irving a lot. Dallas, 36. So they're even worse than Carolina against the run in EPA. They're about even in success rate. So just goes to show how bad they've been this year. So yep, I definitely like getting the pieces of this game if I'm playing on FanDuel.
Yeah, Coolers makes a good point too to watch some of the injury lists, especially for Tampa Bay. Cade Otton listed as doubtful. If he's out, that's 8 to 10 targets a game that suddenly evaporate. Probably leads to more Mike Evans stuff. You probably get more work out of like McMillan and Shepard and stuff.
Payne Durham becomes a cheap tight end you can play for minimum salary as well.
I mean, I'm not going to play him, but you can. It's something you can do.
Well, it's a way to get off of Brenton Strange, for example, right?
Sure.
Like on FanDuel.
Yeah, actually, I do like that. I don't really have much to add for this other than I think it's a pretty good spot if you want to play FanDuel. I like the Evans Baker stack a lot. How many times this season so far is like a Baker Mayfield stack won? One, because he throws the ball a lot and he's got good targets, but two, the Tampa Bay secondary is giving up like 30 points a game and forcing teams to throw against them because their run defense is pretty good, and they're like, well, we'll just throw against you, and they're giving up these massive plays, massive broken coverage plays on the defense.
Yep, and Dallas without Overshown, it really hurt. I mean, they still have Parsons, but it really hurts Overshown was their best pass rusher when Parsons was out, so not having him really hurts them as well as be able to get pressure on Mayfield. So yeah, I definitely like getting to this Tampa offense, especially Dowdle at 22%. I haven't really looked that deep into the FanDuel running back salary tiers to see where he's at. That just 22% seems pretty aggressive to me. I'd much rather just play CD. There we go.
So among running backs, we've got Gibbs and Chase Brown up high. Or let me sort it by ownership. Gibbs, Hubbard, Chase Brown, and then Dowdle. Like, I'm totally with you there. Like James Conner, I'd rather play above Dowdle. You got Achane, Saquon. And as far as pricing goes, 7,300, you're not really saving much. I mean, Chuba Hubbard's $200 cheaper, and in my opinion, probably has a better workload.
Even Aaron Jones against Seattle, even though Seattle's defense has been improved lately, I don't hate that either. Josh Jacobs ran all over them last week. Yeah,
you got Pollard $100 cheaper, and then if he's without Tyjae Spears, there's touchdown equity there in a game where they're probably going to want to run the ball.
So Bucks offense for me, under on Dowdle, and then CD is definitely the preferred stack bring back for Dallas.
I'm with you there. Let's wrap it up and talk about some of our favorite plays under 10% at each position. Load my projections back up here. So at cornerback, we've got the most ownership coming into Anthony Richardson and Michael Penix up top. That makes sense. They're cheap and have rushing upside. And in general, there's not a ton of like ceiling smash quarterbacks on the slate. Like, we have Josh Allen, but we're probably not going to see the same Josh Allen that we saw the past few weeks. You could argue Joe Burrow to an extent, big ceiling and a pretty good matchup against the Browns, but no like true elite super smash quarterbacks on the slate that we can expect stuff from. So I see why people are gravitating towards cheaper quarterbacks here. Do you have a favorite play out of the lower owned quarterbacks here?
Yeah, for me, it'd be Bryce Young. This Arizona secondary hasn't been that great this year. I think they're like 20th or 21st in EPA. Bryce Young obviously has been a lot better the last few weeks, and he's got some pretty obvious stacking partners with Coker and Thielen. So he'd be the one for me at like 3% ownership versus some of the other cheap high owned running back or quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm going to go along in a similar vein with Caleb Williams. The game script sets up well for him. The total's there. The stacking partners are obvious, and he has rushing upside as well. So I like the spot. 6% ownership is fine for me to lean into, and I think that there's plenty of ways to get different with roster construction where I don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
Let's take a look at running back. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs obviously coming in as the highest owned, and we do expect that ownership to come up quite a bit. Followed by James Conner, Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard, Devon Achane. Out of these lower owned guys, do you have a guy that you probably going to be over the field on or like more than the rest of the field?
Man, I don't want to take your guy. I feel like I gotta take Saquon. If you don't take Saquon, I will.
You can have Saquon. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take Saquon.
Nice. I'm going to go to it's kind of tough. And again, it's injury dependent for me, but I don't know why I keep getting a lot of Tony Pollard in the Sims. So I'm going to trust it. I'm going to trust it this week. I didn't trust Aaron Rodgers stuff, but I was getting Tony Pollard stuff popping in the Sims. Maybe it's just because my projections were kind of, leaning Tajay half out and, giving him like a middle projection, but I'll have to check on it. But for me, it's Tony Pollard coming in pretty much unowned, team that wants to run the ball. And I think they're going to have more offensive success without Will Levis under center. So more scoring opportunities for them. And I think, Tony Pollard's pretty live for 101, which I think is probably fine out of him.
Yeah, and nice thing about Saquon is you don't have to explain why you like Saquon ownership.
Yeah.
I'd also shout out James Cook at he's right around the Gibbs Connor tier. He's not owned at all, and his team has a 30 total. And we've seen him before have these huge multiple touchdown games.
Yeah.
And so I don't mind that one either as alone.
Yeah, they're going to pound the rock and not really have any troubles doing it either.
Yeah, the problem really is, everything's kind of baked in already to his projection, but he has Ray Davis has looked really good as a rookie. They like using Ty Chandler as well out of the backfield as a receiver. So obviously there's concern there, but I do kind of like that spot. Is the team total is just too good to pass up to me, and not owned at all.
At 2%, it doesn't really take much to get like 5 or 6% of them and just feel really good about it.
Yeah.
Checking in at tight end, we have Brenton Strange coming in as the highest owned, which makes sense. Really good target share role on the Jags offense, and he's really cheap. Below him, we've got McBride, Henry, and Jonnu. Any low-owned tight ends really catching your eye here?
Pretty gross. Once you get under, especially right below Bowers, it's tough.
Yeah, Bowers at 9.5 is my cop-out answer because it's technically under 10.
I'd probably go, because I made that joke earlier about if Nick Westbrook-Ikine is out, it's going to be Chigaquanko who's going to be left wide open 40 yards down the field. He has flashed upside before. His ability to run after the catch has been pretty impressive for somebody at his size. And otherwise, I'd probably just go with George Kittle in a game I expect the Niners to throw the ball a lot.
Yeah, I like that shout. Kittle at 7% is probably fine too. I envision that the Niners are going to have to throw the ball a ton. Purdy obviously has to put his goods to show, and Kittle is a really good target for him. So at 6%, I think it's totally fine. Wide receiver, we have Neighbors, DJ Moore, Brian Thomas Jr. coming in pretty high owned. Scrolling down, we're starting our list with Josh Downs. Anybody on the screen sort of popping off to you as a guy you want to get overweight on?
Yeah, I do like Downs, but I think the one who was brought up earlier, I do like Marvin Harrison here at no ownership. It's not fun, but 5,400. He was still the number 2 pick last year, or number 3. I don't remember he's number 2 or 3, but he still has that elite pedigree, and at some point he's going to look like the number 1 receiver that he just was in the draft. So I'll take Marvin Harrison Jr. And this Carolina defense. Not much needs to be said about how bad they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really good spot. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Amon-Ra and Jameson down there, and a game again where we've got the Lions with a massive implied team total, and they're garnering no ownership. You can get leverage plays off of the Jahmyr Gibbs stuff by going to them, so I think those are really good plays in tournaments. But I'm going to give my wide receiver reward this week to Tyreek Hill with no Jalen Waddle. I think at some point it's just got to give, right? The Dolphins are scoring 27 on average at home. No Jalen Waddle. There has to be some of that work coming down to Tyreek Hill, and at 5% in a game environment where we expect both teams to be passing quite a bit and both offenses to have some relative levels of success, I think that he's a pretty good play there at lower ownership.
Yeah, and Amon-Ra, especially as a way to flip the lineup build this week, where everybody's going to be playing these 7 and 8K running backs. You can play the 7 and 8K receivers and try to find a couple value running backs. Patrick Taylor, we talked about, might have a decent passing game role, would be one. There's different ways to do it. So I do really like Amon-Ra at that ownership too, just as a way to be different from Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep. Then popping over to defenses again every week, doesn't really matter. Defenses are defensive. Just trying not to get too overexposed. Looks like we have the Bills, Bengals up top as popular defenses. That makes sense. The Bengals against Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and the Bills defensive unit against a putrid New England line, who, if I have my note sheet pulled up, I'd probably tell you, but I think they're near last in the league in offensive line rating. So I get that. I think the ownerships are fine there. Salary on them looks fine as well. Do you have any
Yeah.
like sleeper defenses you're kind of liking here?
Yep, I brought up Minnesota earlier during the show. They're the one that they do play a very high variant style, and we just don't know how healthy Geno is right now. If he's immobile in the pocket and Minnesota's bringing blitzes every play, it's a nice way to get some sacks and potentially some fumbles, and also you're getting leverage off of the popular Metcalf and JSN combination from Seattle.
Yeah, I'll give the Eagles an honorary shout here. I do expect it really just depends on how much the Commanders really want to throw the ball and keep up with the Eagles here in general. I think they're trying to throw a lot. That being said, Caleb Williams is a pretty good scrambler and great rushing upside. So who knows how many of his sacks are going to be evaded or how his ball accuracy is doing. But I do kind of like the Eagles a bit here as a lower owned defense.
Yep, I agree with you there. They've been the best defense in the league. Well, one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the league for the past two months now. So yeah, definitely have the upside.
Yeah, I don't hate Detroit either as a defense. Again, like Corey said, you get some leverage off of some higher owned Bears stuff, and also it might be a bit under owned as a stack with Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of people playing a Jahmyr Gibbs, and there is some correlation between running back and DST. Probably not as much as a lot of people like to think, but there is some, and it's going to be probably a lower owned combination for that stack, especially if you're playing Caleb Williams as a primary stack with Jahmyr as a run back. Probably not going to see a lot of lines there, but Caleb Williams, super turnover prone. Bears in general can look pretty terrible, and they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. So a lot of potentials there for the Lions to score on defense and really accelerate the pace of play in that game.
Yeah, and even without Hutchinson, Caleb Williams has had a pressure rate and sack rate that's similar like David Carr his first year at the Texans. So, yeah, definitely don't mind that one either.
Yep, agreed there. I did run a sim earlier we can take a look at before we get out of here just to see kind of what's popping up. If I take my top 150.
Caleb.
Yeah, Caleb and A-Rich, baby. They're popping. Mm-hmm. So we got Caleb at 31%, A-Rich at 22, and then a lot of the cheapest coming from Michael Penix. Yeah, AOC.
Without Brock Bowers, that was interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's even popping with some Michael Mayer in there, which is a bit gross, but it is a way to, get cheap at tight end. So
what about how much Bryce Young and Kyler did you get? I see 3% Kyler, I think.
Yeah, 3% Kyler. Looks like no Bryce Young. Yeah, no Bryce Young.
Well, the projections you have it wrong.
Yeah, and then at running back, no surprise, we've got a ton of Jahmyr Gibbs. Alexander Madison makes sense as a cheapie, although I don't have a ton of love for him this week. I like the passing game better there. I'm worried about his workload and general game script stuff and efficiency. I mean, Alexander Madison's not a great running back. James Conner at 16, love the spot there. Aaron Jones also probably in a really good spot. Just a bit tougher of a click for me than guys around his price, but I still think he's probably fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyron at 6%. I was trying to figure out where he ended up. Makes sense to me too. I know Coolers likes Kyron this week, and I do think he has upside. Just different ways to play, trying to play around the Jahmyr Gibbs chalk. Lions have like 23 players on IR. Yeah.
But that's priced in, right? And we're just looking for upside.
Right. It's just turnover based, really. Caleb Williams takes sacks. He's gonna be throwing the football. Ball in the air is good. Anytime the ball is not in a skill position player's hands for the defense is typically good.
Yep.
Tight ends, we've got Brenton Strange and Michael Mayer love. I'm guessing the Michael Mayer stuff is probably just a direct pivot off of lineups that didn't have Brenton Strange. Similar price, lower ownership. I didn't really check the projections, but I'm guessing probably higher median for Brenton, but similar range of outcomes for Michael Mayer given his spike in snap participation the past few weeks.
Yeah, probably something like that. I do see some or a couple Strange and Mayer. There's a Penix one there with
double
that.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one. So I mean, it allows you to, if you play the Michael Penix Drake London stack, you can jam in Jahmyr Gibbs, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and Keenan Allen, and then all you got to do is hold your nose and play the stinky 2 tight ends. Yeah. Wide receiver, we got DJ Moore love. A lot of Bears love in general, so that's where Coolers was coming in with the Detroit defense stuff. Jamar Chase, elite ceiling. Tyreek Hill popping quite a bit, which I like. Some Seattle wide receivers, and then a bit of A bit of Panthers love below that as well.
It's funny. The next Brenton Strange, Michael Meyer lineup is also a Penix lineup, but that one's naked Penix with Gibbs, Amon Ra, Chase Brown, Debo, and Puka.
Yeah, I posted a lineup earlier in our Discord. It was Caleb Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and it had Puka Nacua on it as well. I mean, there's a lot of fun ways you can smash like 4 players on your roster that are all capable of actually scoring 35 DraftKings points or more.
Yeah.
And then defenses, tons of Raiders, Bills, Bengals, Giants. That looks good to me. Are there any like specific roster combinations you want to look at or anything like that?
Not really. I mean, who are you? How much Odunze did you get with Caleb? Like, are you just getting all Caleb doubles?
Yeah, let me see. Pull up 150. Let's look at our top 150 Caleb Williams lineups and look at our wide receiver exposure. So we got 81% DJ Moore, 76% Keenan Allen, and then Rome Odunze we got to scroll down for 9%. Not a ton.
Jeez.
So, I mean, the Sims are telling us not to play him. Like my body's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes. Mine's telling me no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's viable. I'm just going to keep – it's like you and Debo. I'm just going to play it until it either bankrupts me or it pays off.
Yep. Well, but I got the Hyperliquid airdrop, so I got a few more weeks now with Debo.
One-time dealer.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it's a good show. Pretty long for us, but I guess I can cop out and say that we had to cover the Saturday slate and whatnot. So I want to thank you guys all for tuning. Oh, yeah, dude.
Good point.
Naked Phoenix. We're going to get the AI to demonetize us.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys for hanging out again this week. We will see you next week. Hope you guys have a really good holidays and best of luck in your contests. Anything you want to say to the folks before we go?
Nope. I'll put up projections for Saturday slate and Sunday slate tonight. And then I'll have one update tomorrow morning for the Saturday slate. And then I will update the Sunday slate probably on Sunday morning and maybe tomorrow night, depending on what kind of news we get. I'm going to be driving all day tomorrow, so I won't be around to kind of look at injuries too much until later tomorrow night.
That makes sense. If you're new here, be sure to head over to acemind.io. We still are running the 30% off promo code, so use that if you have not yet. If you're not in our Discord, be sure to join, ask us questions, talk about the slate, all that fun stuff. Yeah, that's going to be it for us. We will see you next week.
We should probably change it to like Xmas 25 or something.
Yeah, we probably should. It's we're a little over the hill on Black Friday, so
we're looking for some marketing people to do this stuff for us for free. If you guys
I got to whip open Photoshop and change all of our stuff. So.
Yeah,
fun stuff. Thanks for watching, guys. We will catch you next week.
See ya.